Sinking his teeth into it. They're really shooting for the moon on this one.
Austin, did you get a necklace?
It wasn't just a high school comedy. It was a film where the lead actor nearly quit, the extras exposed themselves on camera, and the basketball scenes were shot in complete chaos. Behind Michael J. Fox's werewolf transformation and feel-good sports montages, the production was falling apart. These are 20 secrets about Teen Wolf hidden for decades. And the bonus? The van that started it all was held together with duct tape and prayers. Number 20. Michael J. Fox was exhausted beyond human limits.
We are in Georgia, shooting Teen Wolf Season 2.
When Michael J. Fox signed on to Teen Wolf, he thought it would be a fun summer project before returning to Family Ties. What he didn't know was that the film would shoot simultaneously with Back to the Future, creating a schedule that nearly culled him. Fox would film Family Ties during the day, drive to the Teen Wolf set at night, work until dawn, then drive to the Back to the Future location and start over. He averaged 2 hours of sleep per night for months, existing in a fog of exhaustion that made him forget his lines, miss his marks, and occasionally fall asleep, standing up between takes. The Teen Wolf crew kept industrial coffee machines running constantly, had assistants whose only job was keeping Fox awake, and filmed scenes out of order to accommodate his collapsing stamina. Director Rod Daniel later admitted they were essentially abusing their star, pushing him past safe limits because the production schedule couldn't accommodate delays. Fox never complained, maintaining professional enthusiasm, even when clearly suffering. But cast members recall him being almost zombie-like, functioning on autopilot. His natural charm carrying scenes, his exhausted brain couldn't fully process. The performance that made Teen Wolf a hit was achieved through sheer willpower and dangerous sleep deprivation. Tenif Ban. Number 19. The werewolf makeup was torture.
Comes the face, because this is always the pivotal hard point because...
Oh, that's beautiful.
When they finish with my makeup in the chair, the thing I always say when they're done is I say, I can taste the blood.
The transformation that looked magical on screen was agony to create. Michael J. Fox spent 4 hours in the makeup chair every single day, having prosthetics applied piece by piece, glued to his face with adhesives that burned his skin and made breathing difficult. The werewolf makeup covered his entire head and neck, trapping heat and sweat underneath layers of foam, latex, and fur. Under the hot production lights, the temperature inside the makeup reached unbearable levels. Fox would film for hours, unable to properly drink water, eat, or cool down. Between takes, crew members would blast him with fans and ice packs, but relief was temporary. The adhesive removers used at the end of each day were chemical solutions that left Fox's skin raw, red, and sometimes bleeding. By week 2, his face was so damaged that makeup artists had to apply special healing creams before starting the prosthetics process again. Fox developed claustrophobia from being trapped inside the makeup, occasionally panicking during application when breathing became too difficult. The production hired a medic specifically to monitor Fox's vital signs during makeup sessions after he nearly passed out twice from heat exhaustion. What audiences saw as a fun werewolf comedy required daily torture of its star, who endured physical misery without ever asking to quit or modify the design. Number 18. The extras weren't supervised. Teen Wolf was a low-budget production that cut corners everywhere, including hiring proper crew to supervise background actors. During the final basketball game scene, hundreds of extras filled the gymnasium bleachers with minimal oversight. They were told to cheer, act excited, and stay in the background. Most followed instructions, but if you watch the celebration scene carefully, frame by frame, you'll notice something that somehow made it past editors, censors, and studio executives. An extra in the crowd deliberately exposed himself on camera, clearly visible for several frames, a prank that went unnoticed for years until home video allowed fans to pause and examine scenes closely. When the exposure was finally discovered in the late 1980s, the studio was horrified. But by then the film had been released theatrically on VHS and broadcast on television multiple times. Recalling copies wasn't financially viable, so they quietly made sure future releases used an alternate take or strategic cropping. The incident became an embarrassing legend, proof that Teen Wolf's rushed production had failed basic quality control. The extra was never identified, never punished, and probably never even knew his prank would become one of cinema's most notorious accidental inclusions, discussed in film classes as an example of what happens when productions skip proper supervision. Number 17. Michael J. Fox couldn't actually play basketball. Scott Howard was supposed to be a basketball star transformed by werewolf abilities, but Michael J. Fox was barely 5 feet 4 inches tall and had almost no basketball skills. He couldn't dribble properly, his shooting form was terrible, and during early rehearsals, he missed even simple layups repeatedly. The production faced a crisis because their entire film depended on basketball sequences that their star couldn't perform. They hired a basketball coordinator to train Fox intensively for weeks before filming, teaching him basic skills and choreographing every movement so he could fake competence. Even with training, most of Fox's successful shots required dozens of takes, and many were achieved through camera tricks, editing, and strategic use of stunt doubles. Wide shots showing Teen Wolf dominating games were actually a body double wearing the werewolf makeup, someone taller and more athletic who could execute moves Fox couldn't attempt. Close-ups of Fox were filmed separately and edited together with the action footage, creating the illusion of continuous performance. The film's most impressive basketball moments, the dunks and fancy dribbling that defined Teen Wolf's athletic prowess, were performed by someone else entirely. Fox gamely attempted what he could, but spent much of filming feeling inadequate and embarrassed by his limited skills. The movie that made him an action star required hiding his physical limitations through cinematic sleight of hand. Number 16. The script was rewritten during filming. Teen Wolf began production without a finished screenplay, a decision that created constant chaos. Writers were revising scenes the night before shooting, actors received new pages every morning, and nobody really knew how the story would end until they were filming the final week. Director Rod Daniel tried to maintain creative vision while essentially improvising a movie, making decisions on the fly about plot points that hadn't been written yet. This approach sounds disastrous, and often it was. Scenes were filmed that later made no sense with the evolving story, requiring expensive reshoots. Character arcs change mid-production, forcing actors to adjust performances without clear direction about where their roles were heading. The romance between Scott and Boof was barely in early drafts, but expanded significantly when test audiences responded positively to their chemistry. Conversely, several subplots were abandoned halfway through, after someone realized they didn't fit the tone or had no satisfying resolution. The basketball championship that forms the film's climax wasn't originally the ending. An earlier version had Scott rejecting his werewolf side entirely and returning to normal life. The feel-good sports movie conclusion was invented late in production when executives decided audiences wanted triumph rather than rejection of power. Cast members have described the experience as terrifying and exhilarating, never knowing what they'd be filming until arriving on set, creating a movie through collective improvisation rather than careful planning. Number 15. The director fought for a darker version. Rod. Daniel originally envisioned Teen Wolf as a darker coming-of-age story about identity, adolescent alienation, and the dangers of embracing power without understanding consequences. His early drafts featured Scott struggling with violent impulses, hurting people while transformed, and facing real consequences for using werewolf abilities for personal gain. The studio rejected this approach entirely, demanding a light comedy suitable for family audiences. Daniel fought back, trying to preserve some psychological complexity, but was overruled repeatedly. Executives wanted a feel-good fantasy where becoming a werewolf solved problems rather than created them, where power brought popularity without cost or moral complication. The tonal conflict shows in the finished film if you watch closely. Some scenes retain hints of Daniel's darker vision, moments where Scott seems genuinely dangerous, or where his transformation feels more curse than blessing. But these moments are surrounded by broad comedy and wish-fulfillment fantasy that undercuts any serious themes. Daniel later expressed frustration that Teen Wolf became a shallow celebration of conformity and popularity rather than a meaningful exploration of adolescent transformation. He'd wanted to make a film about the danger of losing yourself to gain acceptance. Instead, he made a movie where the werewolf wins the basketball game and gets the girl, teaching viewers that being special makes you popular rather than isolated. The compromise left nobody fully satisfied, but made a commercial success that neither Daniel's dark version nor the studio's pure comedy would have achieved. Number 14. Susan Earth City was cast. The day before filming
Yeah. Thanks, Harold. Thanks for the game. Thanks for everything. You better work on that jump shot.
the role of Boof, Scott's best friend who secretly loves him, was cast last minute after the actress originally hired dropped out when offered a better paying role in another production. Susan Earth City auditioned, was hired the same day, and arrived on set the next morning with barely any preparation. She hadn't read the full script, didn't know most of her lines, and had no time to build chemistry with Michael J. Fox before filming their first scene together. The situation could have been disastrous, but Earth City's natural warmth and genuine nervousness actually worked perfectly for the character. Boof was supposed to be awkward, uncertain, hiding romantic feelings beneath friendship. Earth City didn't have to act on those qualities. She was living them, genuinely nervous about working with Fox, unsure of herself in the role, creating authentic vulnerability the camera captured. Fox, exhausted from his impossible schedule, appreciated Earth City's low-key energy and lack of ego. They developed real friendship quickly, which translated to believable on-screen connection despite having almost no rehearsal time. The film's most emotionally genuine moments come from their interactions, particularly the scene where Boof confronts Scott about how fame has changed him. That confrontation worked because Earth City was channeling real feelings about being thrust into a production where everyone else seemed more prepared and confident. Her last-minute casting became a strange advantage, bringing unrehearsed authenticity to a film that desperately needed emotional grounding beneath its fantasy premise. Number 13. The transformation effects. Almost bankrupted production. Teen Wolf's modest budget allocated limited funds for special effects, but the werewolf transformation sequences required expensive prosthetics, makeup, and technical expertise. The production quickly went over budget on effects alone, forcing producers to make desperate cuts elsewhere. Filming locations were reduced, shooting days compressed, and entire scenes eliminated to free up money for transformation effects that couldn't be compromised without destroying the film's premise. The financial crisis became so severe that production nearly shut down halfway through when the money ran out. Producers scrambled to secure emergency funding, convincing the studio that the investment would pay off if they could just finish filming. The studio reluctantly provided additional money, but demanded cost-cutting measures that affected every department. Sets were reused creatively. Some actors performed multiple roles to reduce casting costs, and several planned sequences were simplified or eliminated entirely. The basketball championship, which should have been the film's spectacular centerpiece, was filmed in just 2 days with minimal coverage because they couldn't afford more time in the gymnasium location. The financial desperation shows occasionally in the finished film, if you look for it. Repeated locations, limited extras, scenes that feel rushed or abbreviated. But the transformation effects, which caused all the budget problems, remain impressive, proving that sometimes spending money on the right elements can save a production even when that spending threatens to destroy it. Teen Wolf succeeded because it prioritized what mattered most and sacrificed everything else. Number 12. Jerry Levine, improvised. Most of his lines
Styles.
Yes, okay? We followed him out here. We won't...
Styles, Scott's hyperactive best friend, wasn't a major character in early drafts. Jerry Levine was hired for what was essentially a supporting role with limited screen time and dialogue, but Levine had comedy training and instincts that Rod Daniel immediately recognized as valuable. Daniel started encouraging Levine to improvise, add jokes, expand his character beyond what was scripted. Levine embraced this freedom enthusiastically, creating Styles' manic energy and memorable one-liners mostly through improvisation. Michael J. Fox loved working with Levine because his unpredictability kept Fox alert and engaged despite his exhaustion. Their scenes together have a loose, spontaneous quality because Levine was genuinely making things up, and Fox was genuinely reacting rather than reciting rehearsed responses. Some of the film's funniest moments came from Levine's improvisations, his physical comedy, his rapid-fire delivery, his ability to find humor in moments that weren't originally written as jokes. As filming progressed, Styles' role expanded significantly, with writers adding scenes specifically to feature Levine's comedy. The character that became a fan favorite and launched Levine's career was created largely on set through improvisation, rather than careful scripting. This collaborative approach, where talented performers were allowed to shape their characters organically, gave Teen Wolf an energy and authenticity that more rigidly scripted productions often lack. Levine's contribution proved that sometimes the best material emerges not from the writing room, but from talented actors given freedom to play. Number 11, the film was nearly rated.
Feeling a little furry in there, buddy? And when you do change, I'm gonna be there to take you straight to the top. I don't howl. You don't see any fangs.
ORS Teen Wolf's final PG rating seems inevitable now, but the MPAA initially threatened an R rating that would have killed the film commercially. The issues weren't violence or language, but scheduled content and party scenes, featuring underage drinking. Early cuts included more explicit material, longer party sequences showing teenagers obviously intoxicated, suggestive scenes between Scott and Pamela that implied asexual activity, and several werewolf transformation moments that the MPAA considered too intense for younger viewers. The ratings board also flagged the film's entire premise as potentially inappropriate, arguing that Scott using werewolf powers to gain popularity and attract girls created problematic messages about deception and manipulation. Producers fought back desperately, knowing that an R rating would eliminate their target audience of teenagers who couldn't attend without parents. They recut the film extensively, removing or shortening flag sequences, adding dialogue, clarifying that Scott learned valuable lessons about being himself, and generally softening content until the MPAA relented. The compromises frustrated Rod Daniel, who felt his already compromised vision was being further diluted, but he accepted the changes as necessary for commercial survival. Some of the removed material later appeared in television versions or home video releases as deleted scenes, showing a slightly edgier film than what played theatrically. The ratings battle highlighted ongoing tensions about how much reality could be included in teen-focused entertainment, whether films should depict adolescent behavior honestly, or present sanitized versions that pretended teenagers didn't drink, have sex, or make questionable choices. Number 10, the basketball court was a high school. They vandalized production couldn't afford to rent a professional gymnasium for extended shooting, so they convinced a local Los Angeles high school to let them use their basketball court during summer break. The school agreed, assuming the production would leave everything as they found it. Instead, the crew caused significant damage installing lights, drilling holes for camera mounts, painting the court with temporary markings that turned out to be not so temporary, and generally treating the space like a disposable film set rather than a functioning school facility. When filming wrapped and the school returned for fall semester, administrators were horrified. The court had scuff marks that wouldn't come out. The paint job was ruined, the bleachers were damaged, and electrical work had left visible holes in walls. The school demanded the production company pay for repairs, but Teen Wolf's budget was already exhausted. Legal threats followed, with the school threatening to sue for damages that would have bankrupted the small production. Eventually, a settlement was reached where the studio paid for partial repairs, and the school accepted that full restoration wasn't financially possible. For years afterward, that high school's basketball court bore visible scars from Teen Wolf's production, a permanent reminder of what happens when film crews prioritize their needs over the spaces they occupy. Students who played on that court had no idea they were running on a minor movie landmark, at least until someone noticed the remaining paint irregularities and traced them back to the film shot there years earlier. The incident became a cautionary tale in production circles about respecting locations. Number 9, Michael J. Fox's father hated the film.
Wrapped in it. It takes me back to the 50s, and I run into my parents and screw things up royally, and I have to kind of get it. I have to introduce my parents.
Michael J. Fox's father was a career military man, serious and practical, who never understood his son's choice to pursue acting. When Fox showed him an early cut of Teen Wolf, hoping for approval or at least acceptance, his father watched in silence, then delivered a devastating verdict. He thought the film was ridiculous, embarrassing, and beneath his son's talents. He couldn't understand why Fox would waste time playing a werewolf in a silly sports comedy when he could be pursuing serious dramatic roles. The rejection crushed Fox, who'd been riding high on Back to the Future's success and hoped Teen Wolf would prove his versatility. His father's disapproval made him question everything about the project, wondering if he'd made a terrible career mistake chasing commercial success over artistic credibility. Fox later admitted that his father's reaction poisoned his feelings about Teen Wolf for years, making it difficult to enjoy the film's success or appreciate what he'd accomplished under impossible conditions. The relationship between father and son remained strained, with Fox's career choices becoming a persistent source of tension. Ironically, Teen Wolf became a cultural touchstone that launched a franchise, proved Fox could carry a film as the lead, and remains beloved by audiences decades later. But Fox never fully shook his father's judgment, always viewing the film through the lens of paternal disappointment rather than objective achievement. Years later, after his father's death, Fox made peace with Teen Wolf, recognizing it as a fun, well-executed comedy that brought joy to millions, even if his father never understood its value. Number 8. The love triangle was added in reshoots.
Get a good night's sleep before practice tomorrow.
Right, because sitting on the bench is such a grueling effort.
No, because I'm playing this year.
Original cuts of Teen Wolf didn't feature the romantic tension between Scott, Boof, and Pamela that defines the final film's emotional arc. Early versions had Scott simply dating Pamela, achieving his dreams through werewolf popularity with no meaningful consequences or emotional growth. Test audiences found this unsatisfying, noting that Scott seemed shallow and his transformation meaningless if he faced no real choices. Studio executives panicked, realizing they'd made a film with an unlikable protagonist who learned nothing. Expensive reshoots were ordered to add the love triangle, creating emotional stakes that the original story lacked. Susan or City was called back to film, new scenes establishing Boof's hidden feelings and Scott's blindness to what was in front of him all along. The reshoot schedule was chaotic, because Michael J. Fox was committed to family ties and had almost no availability. Scenes were filmed piecemeal over months, with Fox showing up for single days between television commitments, requiring precise planning to capture what was needed in minimal time. Laurie Griffin, who played Pamela, wasn't informed about the new direction until arriving for reshoots, forcing her to adjust her performance to accommodate character changes she hadn't prepared for. The rushed additions show occasionally in the final film, with slightly different lighting, or Fox's appearance varying slightly between scenes that should be continuous. But the emotional complexity added in reshoots transformed Teen Wolf from shallow wish fulfillment into something resembling an actual coming-of-age story, proving that sometimes fixing problems after the fact, however expensive and difficult, saves a film from its own worst instincts. Number 7. The sequel was planned before release. Before Teen Wolf ever reached theaters, before anyone knew if it would succeed or fail catastrophically, Atlantic Entertainment had already commissioned a sequel script. The decision was based purely on hope and desperation. A low-budget studio gambling that lightning might strike twice. The sequel script was terrible, featuring Scott Howard as a college student dealing with fraternity hijinks and romantic complications, essentially the first film repeated with a campus setting. Michael J. Fox read it, hated it, and refused to participate. The studio initially insisted Fox was contractually obligated to appear in a sequel, but Fox's lawyers found loopholes that freed him from any commitment. Rather than abandon the sequel investment entirely, Atlantic made the baffling decision to proceed with Teen Wolf 2, recasting the lead with Jason Bateman playing Scott's cousin. The resulting film was a critical and commercial disaster that damaged everyone involved and nearly culled Bateman's career before it really started. What's fascinating is how the sequel's failure actually helped the original Teen Wolf's reputation. By comparison, the first film looked better, more original, more carefully crafted than it actually was. The sequel's awfulness made Teen Wolf seem like a minor classic rather than a lucky accident, elevating its cultural status through contrast. Fox dodged a bullet by refusing the sequel, protecting his career from association with a widely mocked failure. The studio learned an expensive lesson about green-lighting sequels based on hope rather than quality or star commitment, though Hollywood would continue making this same mistake for decades. Number 6. The soundtrack. Cost more than the special effects. Teen Wolf's producers understood that music would be crucial for marketing to teenage audiences, so they allocated a disproportionate amount of their limited budget to licensing popular songs and commissioning new material. The soundtrack budget exceeded what was spent on werewolf effects, filming locations, or any other single production element. This created ongoing tension between departments, with the effects team begging for more money, while producers insisted that commercial viability depended on having the right music. The investment paid off commercially, with Teen Wolf's soundtrack becoming a modest hit that helped promote the film through MTV and radio play. Songs like Win in the End by Mark Safon became associated with 80s teen culture, their presence in the film helping it connect with audiences who might otherwise have dismissed the low-budget werewolf comedy. But the budget prioritization created problems during production, forcing compromises in other areas that hurt the film's quality. Several planned sequences were simplified or eliminated because the money had been spent on music rights. The special effects team couldn't afford certain transformation techniques they had planned, resulting in werewolf effects that were good but not spectacular. Even catering and crew accommodations suffered, with the production operating on shoestring budgets while expensive songs played in scenes. Years later, when evaluating what made Teen Wolf successful, most analysts agreed the music investment was correct, that the soundtrack helped the film find its audience and remain culturally relevant. But cast and crew members still resent that their working conditions suffered, so that executives could license popular songs, prioritizing marketing over the people actually making the film. Number 5. Jay Tarses was fired. Mid-production.
By Zeus, turned into a monster. as punishment for his own monstrous actions.
And up comes this slide about this guy that they've been chasing in the woods in North Carolina.
I thought you were in South America.
I was. The bodies of the werewolves I told you about?
The original producer of Teen Wolf was Jay Tarses, an experienced television producer making his first film. Tarses had a specific vision for the movie as a smart satire about teenage conformity and the price of popularity. He clashed constantly with Atlantic Entertainment executives who wanted a simpler, more commercial comedy without satirical edges or meaningful themes. The conflicts escalated throughout pre-production and early filming, with Tarses fighting for more budget, better scripts, and creative freedom the studio wouldn't grant. Finally, 3 weeks into production, the studio fired him, bringing in Scott Rosenfeld to replace him and execute their commercial vision without resistance. Tarses' firing devastated the cast and crew, many of whom had signed on specifically to work with him and believed in his approach. Michael J. Fox considered quitting in solidarity, but was contractually trapped and financially couldn't afford to walk away. The production culture changed immediately after Rosenfeld took over, becoming more corporate and less collaborative, with creative decisions made by committee rather than clear vision. Some of what Tarses had planned remained in the film, creating tonal inconsistencies where hints of satire exist alongside straightforward comedy. But his firing ensured that Teen Wolf would be the commercial product the studio wanted rather than the smarter film Tarses had planned. Years later, Tarses rarely discussed Teen Wolf, clearly bitter about the experience and unwilling to claim association with a film that bore little resemblance to what he'd originally envisioned. His name remains in the credits, but his influence was largely erased by executives who valued safety over ambition. Number 4. The werewolf design changed 3 times.
You blew that shot.
He's sticking his teeth into it. They're really shooting for the moon on this one.
Oh, Austin, did you get a necklace?
The iconic Teen Wolf look that became synonymous with 80s comedy wasn't the first, second, or even third design created for the film. Original concept art showed a much more frightening werewolf, closer to traditional horror movie monsters, with pronounced fangs, darker fur, and genuinely menacing features. Test makeup applications on Michael J. Fox revealed immediate problems. The scary design was too intense for the comedy tone the studio wanted, made Fox unrecognizable, and was so uncomfortable he could barely speak through the prosthetics. The second design went the opposite direction, creating a cute, almost cartoonish werewolf that looked ridiculous on screen, more suitable for a children's show than a teenage comedy. Everyone hated it, including Fox, who felt embarrassed wearing what looked like a costume rather than a transformation. The third attempt split the difference, creating the design that appears in the film, recognizably wolfish but not scary, distinctive but not cartoonish, allowing Fox's expressions to remain visible through the makeup. Even this final design went through multiple revisions during a filming, with the makeup team constantly adjusting proportions, fur texture, and coloring based on how it looked under lights and on camera. The evolution cost enormous time and money, contributing to the budget crisis that plagued production. But finding the right design was essential because the werewolf appearance had to work comedically, allow for athletic performance, and remain appealing rather than off-putting to teenage audiences who were the target demographic. The final design succeeded in all these areas, becoming iconic enough that it's still instantly recognizable decades later. Number 3. Atlantic Entertainment nearly collapsed during production. Teen Wolf was made by Atlantic Entertainment, a small independent studio that gambled everything on this film and a handful of other low-budget projects. During production, the studio's financial situation deteriorated rapidly as other projects failed, and investors grew nervous about their prospects. By the time Teen Wolf reached post-production, Atlantic was essentially bankrupt, unable to pay vendors, crew members, or finish the film properly. The editing process was interrupted multiple times by financial crises, with work stopping whenever money ran out and resuming only when emergency funding could be secured. The music licensing that consumed so much budget was actually a desperation move, Atlantic's executives hoping that a hit soundtrack might generate enough advance interest to secure distribution deals that would save the company. Several distributors looked at rough cuts of Teen Wolf and passed, convinced it was unmarketable garbage that would disappear without a trace. Atlantic was preparing to declare bankruptcy and sell the film's assets to pay creditors when a small distribution company finally agreed to give Teen Wolf a limited theatrical release, more out of pity than business sense. Nobody expected it to succeed. The plan was basically to dump it in theaters, recover whatever minimal revenue was possible, and move on. Then something miraculous happened. Teen Wolf opened modestly but held remarkably well week to week, building an audience through word of mouth rather than the marketing budget Atlantic couldn't afford. Within a month, the film was a genuine hit, earning back its budget multiple times over and saving Atlantic Entertainment from bankruptcy. The studio that nearly collapsed during production was rescued by the very film that had pushed them to the brink. Number 2. Michael J. Fox injured himself doing his own stunts.
It's got some really cool, creepy kind of music in it, and it's gonna look really good. I'm really excited for it. I can't wait to see it. It's happening to me.
Despite his exhaustion and limited athletic ability, Michael J. Fox insisted on performing as many of his own stunts as possible, wanting Teen Wolf to feel authentic rather than obviously using doubles for action sequences. This decision resulted in multiple injuries that complicated an already chaotic production schedule. Fox sprained his ankle during a basketball scene, requiring him to film for days with a hidden injury that affected his movement and caused constant pain. He dislocated a finger catching a basketball awkwardly, needing it popped back into place before continuing filming the same day. The most serious injury came during a scene where Scott surfs on top of a moving van, a stunt that should have been performed by a professional, but Fox insisted on attempting himself. He lost his balance, nearly fell off the van traveling at dangerous speed, and caught himself in a way that severely strained his shoulder. The injury required medical treatment and affected his ability to perform physically for the remainder of shooting. Insurance companies were furious, threatening to drop coverage if Fox continued taking unnecessary risks. The studio ordered him to stop doing stunts, but Fox found ways to attempt physically demanding scenes whenever supervision was lax. His injuries slowed production, cost money in schedule adjustments, and added to the already overwhelming challenges the film faced. But Fox believed that audiences would notice if he wasn't really performing Teen Wolf's athletic feats, that the film's authenticity depended on him actually doing what the character supposedly could do, even if it meant risking injury to achieve that believability. His commitment was admirable, but reckless, endangering himself and the production for marginal improvements in authenticity. Number 1. The film was never supposed to be a comedy.
Please do not open the test booklet.
The original Teen Wolf script was a serious drama about a teenager dealing with a genetic condition that isolated him from peers and forced him to hide his true identity. Think more angst-driven John Hughes than light comedy. The werewolf transformation was meant as a metaphor for puberty, difference, and the struggle to fit in while dealing with uncontrollable changes. Early drafts featured dark scenes of Scott hurting people while transformed, struggling with violent urges, and facing genuine consequences for using his abilities. His father's revelation about the family curse was supposed to be traumatic rather than played for laughs. The romance was serious, the basketball elements were minimal, and the overall tone was closer to horror than comedy. When Atlantic Entertainment optioned the script, they completely reimagined it as a comedy because they didn't have the budget for serious horror or drama and thought comedy would be easier to sell to teenage audiences. The writer, Jeff Loeb, fought against this transformation of his material, arguing that the commercial comedy version betrayed everything he'd tried to say about adolescent alienation and identity. He eventually had his name changed in the credits and disavowed the finished film, refusing to discuss it in interviews for years. The irony is that Teen Wolf's comedy approach made it far more successful than the serious drama would have been, reaching wider audiences and becoming a cultural touchstone precisely because it didn't take itself seriously. But Loeb never forgave what was done to his script, viewing Teen Wolf as a cautionary tale about Hollywood's ability to transform meaningful material into commercial product without regard for original intent or artistic vision. The film that became an iconic comedy was never supposed to make anyone laugh. Bonus fact, the Wolf van was held together by duct tape.
Styles, where the hell did you get this?
Hey, Harry's used cars, man. We traded in the no.
Well, let's go pick up Lewis, okay? What? Styles, come on, what is it with Lewis? He's avoiding me.
The iconic Wolf van that Styles drives throughout Teen Wolf wasn't a professionally modified vehicle. It was a beaten-up Volkswagen bus purchased for $300 from a junkyard, barely functional and in terrible condition. The production's art department had minimal budget for vehicle modifications, so they spray-painted Wolf on the side, added some cheap decorations, and hoped it would survive filming. The van broke down constantly, sometimes multiple times per day, requiring a full-time mechanic whose entire job was keeping it running between takes. The engine overheated, the transmission slipped, and the brakes were dangerously unreliable. For driving scenes, a second working vehicle had to follow closely in case the van died mid-shot, which happened frequently. The interior was even worse, with seats held in place by duct tape, exposed wiring that occasionally sparked, and a persistent burning oil smell that made actors nauseated. Jerry Levine refused to actually drive it after the brakes failed during a scene, requiring stunt drivers for any shots involving actual movement. After filming wrapped, the van was so destroyed it couldn't be sold or donated. It was towed directly to a scrapyard where it was crushed, ending its brief film career the same way it started, as garbage. For years, fans asked what happened to the famous Wolf van, hoping it had been preserved. The truth was less romantic. It had literally fallen apart and been destroyed, held together during filming by duct tape, prayer, and a mechanic's constant vigilance. Teen Wolf wasn't crafted with care. It survived. Every frame represents someone's exhaustion, compromise, or desperate improvisation. The star could barely stay awake. The budget ran out mid-production, and the studio nearly collapsed before release. But somehow this chaotic mess became a beloved classic that defined 80s teen comedy. Sometimes the best films aren't made. They're rescued from disaster one crisis at a time.